I'm Gayle Coyne, and this is Harriett Bannon, the author of the poem The Suffragettes, but also the author and co-author with me of the book Suffragettes. And we're in her home today, going to interview her on all the things that she has thought about while she was creating this wonderful poem and the book. So Harriet's going to first start out with reading the poem, The Suffragette Poem.
Thanks, Gail. Johnny will not let me be on his baseball team. I can run as fast as he. I don't know why he is so mean. 'Cause you're a girl, and girls can't play on our baseball team today. Georgia Tech is my dream, to be a chemist just like Dad. My grades are perfect, you will see. Answer no will make me sad. Oh no, my dear, you'll never pass. The boys would drum you out of class. Husband, let me cut my hair. I want to look like Clara Bow. To shorten my dress and roll my socks, just like her in the picture show. You're my wife and I say no. Your dimpled knees you'll never show. Your medical team I will apply. A doctor I would be. I have credentials up to date. Please say yes to me. Men only, miss, is our creed. As a cute little nurse, you may succeed. I never wanted to be a clerk. I need the job, what could I do? My pay was less than the boy next door because my name was Mary Lou. Unfair, I cried. I'll do my part. With Susan B., I'll make my start. The women took part in a famous tea party to fight with all their strength and fervor, to ensure for women in all walks of life, for each and every endeavor, integrity, respect, and dignity, in action and in word, the right to work, the right to vote, and voices to be heard. I joined the team with all my heart to pass just laws that are the same. A right to vote and wages fair, equal rights will be our game. In 1920, we felt just fine. Things were beginning to fall in line. We marched on the towns, often in jail. With right on our side, we dare not fail. So waving our flags with heads held high, we looked Mr. Wilson right in the eye. We want our rights. We want them now. We'll never give up. That we vow. The 19th Amendment by Congress was passed, granting all women the right to vote. President Wilson's name when he wrote completed the fight we faithfully fought. Men learned a lesson, much to their sorrow. Don't doubt our strength today or tomorrow. 100 years have passed with speed. Generations of women did succeed, putting into place the laws of the land. The 19th Amendment did demand. Improving our worth, we did just fine. Equality in pay must now fall in line. Daughters, pick up and carry the torch. Your future looks brighter each day. The door opens wide for all to take part. Teamwork and fairness we must always display. All races and creeds, daughters and sons, join hands and minds for a job well done.
Thank you, Harriet. And that really is the beginning of her poetry. So tell us a little bit about how you started writing poetry and when.
Well, actually, as you know, I'm 101 years old, and I had never written poetry before, maybe a few little funny lines or something. But our DAR group, well, National DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, we had they have a contest every year, and Suzanne Williams and I are on the Heritage Committee, and we were talking about that day. Everybody who had an ancestor at the Battle of Kings Mountain, who had ancestors had to stand up and be counted. So I just looked at something, it popped into my head, and I said to Suzanne, if I wrote a little poem about Kings Mountain, could you put some music to go with it? And she said, I think I could. So that's how that poem started. And then we found out we were on the wrong page because that wasn't the subject at all. It was the suffragettes. So I had to do a turnabout. And so that night I went home pretty perplexed and really annoyed with myself. And all I kept thinking about it, forming little words in my mind. So about midnight, I got up and jotted down some of my thoughts and did pretty well with the poem. But of course I had to make a few adjustments and changes. But that's how it came to be written.
What do you think inspired you to write the poetry that you do? What is your inspiration?
Well, I think the fact that I've always loved poetry myself, I think it's such a beautiful way to tell a story or to put a sentiment into words. And I think sharing with my mother and my brother and my son at a later time, we used to enjoy reciting poetry to each other. And I enjoy doing it with my students in school. I just think it's a beautiful thing. I always have.
And when you were a teacher and a principal, did you utilize poetry in your lessons?
Yes, I did. Every day after lunch, we would have a story time, a literature time, and usually it was a story from a book that we would read the chapter every day, and they could hardly wait for that. But we would also do some poetry, and they especially enjoyed poetry like James Whitcomb Riley, the Hoosier poet, who wrote Little Orphan Annie, when she comes to our house to stay, to wash the pots and pans up and shoo the crumbs, wipe the crumbs away. They enjoyed that, or the Raggedy Man. And Alfred Noyes was one of our favorites, who wrote The Highwayman. That tells a wonderful story that could almost be on the program today. Just that kind of thing I did enjoy with the children and with my family.
When you wrote this poem, or these poems, I should say, did you envision that they would be a book?
No, I didn't. I had no idea that it would ever be a book. I guess, wrote for the Heritage Committee and for our own sake. And I had no idea until you told me that you thought it, you kept pushing me about that you thought it had the merit. And then you mentioned it to Richard Eller, whom I have always admired, his love of history and literature. And I thought, well, if Richard thinks it's bad or thinks it's good, and you think it's good, then it must be good.
And it was, and then the adventure started, and we had Red Hawk Publication, Richard Eller and Robert Knipe helping us, because neither of us have ever done this before until this past year. So when we did this book, did you envision other books coming?
No.
And so do you have other books that will be coming with other poems?
Well, I have a book about the bird's birthday party for Grandma, and that started because of the virus. My son had planned 100-guest luncheon for me at the country club. It was going to be quite an affair. A lot of family was coming in. And then the virus came along and we couldn't have it anymore. In the meantime, I had received a lot of bird feeders for my birthday. So the birds were out there, and I thought, why can't they give me a party? And so that was how I wrote that. So all the birds got together and decided. So that's going to be a cute little book. And Bridget O'Hadley is doing the pictures, which are very clever and cute. And I think it'll be fine.
So when we started on this journey with the Suffragette, what did you find to be the most fun in creating the book?
I think learning. I have learned so much. And that was fun, and especially, I think, working with you. You opened a lot of doors for me for things that I had not thought about. And I think getting to know the people at the community college a little bit and I just think learning and talking about it, and every day seemed like I knew something, that a door was open. and it was just great.
And there's a new door that's opened with this book as well. The QI technology that Red Hawk Publication is going to be helping with, and Jim Broslow's creation of this technology. This Suffragette will be the first book in the world to introduce what's called quick information technology.
And that's going to be in our book?
It's going to be in our Suffragette book.
My goodness.
Yes, and we're going to have the ability for the reader to have that multimedia experience, which you and I both agreed is so important for people, not only for people who read, but people who have difficulty reading. They're going to have that ability to have other resources such as multimedia, video, like we're doing right here. This is going to be in the book.
That will be wonderful, because when I was a little girl, somebody got the idea that maybe all of the voices that had ever been spoken in the world were still floating around in the atmosphere somewhere. And I remember thinking, wouldn't that be wonderful if we could hear George Washington speak?
And here we have this opportunity for them, these people, to hear what the author is saying right in the book. We talked a lot about history and about the suffragette movement, and you have had a very interesting career. You've gotten an advanced degree, and we talked about how the suffrage movement has moved forward and has benefited people today. And do you see that as something that has helped you to move forward with awareness of how your ancestors fought for these rights? Or was it something that you didn't realize until you read the book?
It's something that I took for granted, the right to vote. I really voted, but I never thought much about why or how I came to do that. However, I do think that I can see a lot of improvement in the life for women, including me. I never felt much pressure from not getting a job. I was a teacher, and at that time there weren't many men in the teaching profession, especially not in the principalships. And I just was able to do that, and I can see that in every walk of life, women have more freedom in the way they dress, what they read, what they say, just everything. We have freedom, and I think a lot of it came about this movement.
This movement really culminated with the women's right to vote in 1920, and that is, you mentioned, the year of your birth.
Right.
So through this wisdom that you have accumulated over the 100 years, what would you say were the most important changes that you have had in your lifetime? What would you attribute?
I feel that medicine, the improvement in medicine, has been the big thing that I feel it has helped more people. I can remember when we didn't even have the sulfa drug, and then when penicillin came about, as it was being produced and talked about, we had a current events class in my 6th grade, and this little girl, every morning she would talk about the companies that were working on this penicillin, just like we are doing the thing today. And so I was interested in that, and I think the surgery, all of the things we do for our heart. I know my father and mother both probably would be living today or a few years before if we had had all of these wonderful things, heart bypass surgery and all of those things. So I think medicine would be my thing. I think communication has been a big thing too. I know my husband, when he was in the war, when they went to war, they stayed 3 or 4 years, and they had no way of communicating except by that little email, V-mail, V for victory, which they would take a picture of the letter he wrote, and we would get not his personal letter, but the copy of it. And now today, the soldiers can talk to their wives on the telephone even, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I'm sure it's good for their morale.
Well, and it's also helping with this book to communicate in different ways as well, so you're absolutely right. Do you think that there's anything else that you would like to say about writing a book or writing poetry? Do you think anybody can do that?
Well, absolutely. I think if I can do it, anybody can do it.
And I think the important message here is you at 100 are very vital and doing wonderful things. And there's certainly a message that we had in the book that we want everyone to feel that empowerment. And I think the suffrage movement also empowered people. I think you are an example of that. I want to thank you for talking with us today.
Well, thank you for all you've done for me, which has been a lot.
Well, I love you, and we've got more adventures, don't we?
Right.